What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of the Nati pod. I'm your host, Ryan Townsend. Thank you so much for joining me today as I welcome a very special guest of mine, Jordan Shoemaker, the Vandalia Butler Athletic Director, my alma mater. Looking forward to the Reds and Braves recap of the Wild Card Series. Reds lose both games. A little disappointing time to be a Reds fan. Lose game 1, 1-0 in 13 innings, and game 2 is a 5-0 sweep. Reds actually set a record, 22 innings, I believe. Beat the 1921 Chicago Giants or whatever that team was. And now we have a record for no runs scored in playoff baseball, so that's nice. But Jordan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to do this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get going here.
Positive.
Yeah. So for the first question I got for you, so coming into the series, we were hot, started slow a little bit, but we were hot coming in 31-29. What was your expectations coming into the series? And then after they all unfolded, what was your reaction to what happened?
So, I think a 3-game series is always a little bit of a crapshoot. I think 2 off days in a row for the first time in 3 weeks when teams playing well is not beneficial either. They hadn't had more than 1 off day in a row since they had the COVID situation in the middle of the season. So that's a little bit fluky. And just a 3-game series is just a crapshoot. I guess I never would have expected 22 innings without scoring a run. But at the same time, losing 2 games in a row, every World Series winner in the history of baseball has lost 2 games in a row. So, I think it's hard to put too much into 2 games. I think it's important that we remember it's 2 games, but it's disappointing. Teams playing well, win 10 out of 12 down the stretch to make a late run to get in and then don't score a run and can't win a game. So it's disappointing, but, that's kind of how baseball's played. Losing 2 games in a row is not a big deal normally. Teams do it all the time. So it's just that this was bad timing to lose 2 games in a row.
Right. So that brings me into my next question here. So with it being a 3-game series, if it's bumped to 5, do you think the outcome is a little different? Obviously, with the bats that we were seeing, they weren't hot. The pitching was on. But in a 5-game series, do you think it's a little different for the Reds, or are you still thinking sweep and, we're just taking that momentum from game 2 into game 3?
Yeah, it's more of a chance for things to even out for sure. There's some bad luck involved. It's hard to get 11 hits in a game and not score a run. There were obviously some mistakes that led to that on the bases and some other things you can point to, like in game 1. But I don't have the research right offhand, but I can't imagine there's many teams this season that got 11 hits in a game and didn't score a run. So there's luck involved in baseball, and that's why you play 162 games normally, is so that luck evens out mostly. And we just didn't have that opportunity. And surely in a 2-game series, luck matters a lot. So, that's part of it, but that's just how it goes.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. I think in a 5-game series, I think it might be a little different, seeing if Sonny Gray can, rebound game 3, and then we'll take game 4 and 5. But, it's just a tough way, like you said, with 3 games, and then the next round's going to 5 games. So could have been a little different, but, can't really tell how we would have done on that. So the second question I have for you, 2 big moments for me in this series, actually 1 in each game. So the first one we'll talk about in game 1. So we've got first and third, 2 outs. I can't remember if it was the 6th, 7th, one of those innings. And we've got Aquino at third, and we've got Kyle Farmer at first. David Bell brings in Matt Davidson, the lefty killer of the team, brings him in a pinch hit for Kurt Casale. First pitch, ball 1 high and outside. And we call a double steal. And we sort of getting a run down, and we can't get a run in, and that burns Casale and Davidson, and Barnhart's got to come in, obviously, because we just burned Casale. What was your take on that? Were you surprised that it happened? Were you like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Or was it just a coach being aggressive, trying to scrape a run across for Trevor, and just to see, what could have happened?
So my issue wasn't necessarily is that move right or wrong, but for 60 games, that's not who the Reds were. That's the first time in 61 games that they played that they had tried a base running trick play. So I guess I don't know if in game 61, in the most important game of the season, I would be in favor of trying something new. it seemed like we decided all of a sudden in game 61 we're going to try something new to produce runs.
Right.
So that's not who the Reds are. And again, I don't think in the playoffs is when you try and reinvent yourself offensively. So, like, that's the part that's confusing to me is not like if that's who you are and you're a running team and you put pressure on defense and you play that way, then sure, then be that team again in game 61. But for 60 games, that's not who they were. So trying that all of a sudden in game 61 is confusing to me. That was my biggest issue with it, is it right or wrong to try and create a run? But like literally had not happened a single time the entire season. So now the most important inning of the entire season, we try something for the very first time. Right,
and that makes sense. And I think it kind of brings up a good point you're talking about. It's like, if we're a stealing base, if we're a running team and try and get that, if like, I don't know, if we have someone other than Kyle Farmer at first base and Aquino at third base, like if we've got two of our faster dudes, like maybe a Shogo or a Winker, if he's got Janikowski in to run, like maybe if we're used to stealing bases there and trying to run, I get that. But with two guys like that, and then obviously burning Matt Davidson and Kirk Casale in the same at bat, I agree with you. It's kind of a little confusing. And Dave Bell even talked about it after. He's like, we're just trying to be aggressive, trying to get Trevor a run. He's pitching his butt off, and, we just can't get anything across. But I kind of agree with in your sense, like, why are we trying to change ourselves in game 61 in the most important situation of the game?
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, I mean, that kind of just at first glance, I was just like, I don't know what we did. Kind of thought about Little League stuff, but is what it is. We got to move on from that. But the second thing I have is in game 2, obviously. We only had 2 hits that game, a little different than game 1 when we had 11. But exchange, and I can't remember the inning, 5th or 6th maybe, when Castillo and Barnhart in the at-bat with Ronald Acuna Jr., Barnhart is continuously giving Castillo the slider. Hey, we got to throw a slider here, throw a slider. Castillo continues to shake off. He ends up giving him Barnhart's wish. He throws a slider, pops a double in the left center gap. They end up scoring a run. It's 1-0. And to me, at that point, once they scored that run, it was almost like the game's over. We can't score a run. So from your coaching days, coaching high school, coaching in college, playing in college, what is that connection between the pitcher and catcher in your eyes as a manager? Did you have to call time and get that squared away before we're going? Or is that's something that should be figured out before? Because that's a big turning point for the Reds.
Yeah. I mean, my assumption is that was in the scouting report. And generally speaking, I think catchers generally have a better handle on the scouting report than the pitchers do, but that's not always the case. So, I mean, not knowing what they went over, and I don't pretend to know the scouting report on Ronald Acuna Jr. I know he's really, really good. That's my scouting report.
Yeah.
I know he's crazy good, and he's fun to watch. So, but, I mean, calling time and trying to figure that out probably wouldn't have been a bad time in that, a bad idea in that situation for sure. Just especially with the importance of that at bat in that situation and how important each run was. So, I mean, it's not something you want to see, obviously, but it happens. I mean, I think talking about it and trying to figure out what each other are thinking instead of just continually shaking off over and over again probably would have been a better result.
Yeah, and my thing with being, a collegiate pitcher is I know what I'm comfortable with on the mound, but in a sense, do I trust my catcher in this position at an important time? Because if I don't trust myself to throw the pitch, then why do I bother to throw the pitch? Because I know it's not going to be a good pitch. You know what I mean?
And there's a balance there between knowing what the scouting report is, but also what's working for you each day, what you feel like you can command and what you think you can hit a spot with. So,
right.
Because every major league hitter can hit every major league pitch. So unless the count's right and the location's right, then it doesn't matter what you throw. So, I mean, there's a balance there between what's working and what the scouting report said, and it seemed like that's where the disconnect was.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, hey, maybe if it's a changeup, maybe we're not talking about the double. Maybe we're talking about the home run in the 9th with Ozuna, or the 8th it was, and then, Duvall maybe. But, I mean, just got to take it and go with it. So the third question I have, so throughout the year, I've been kind of vocal on David Bell. Some of his in-game managing tactics I really haven't liked. I felt like he's mismanaged. Coming out of the bullpen, pinch hitters, stuff like that. Just, the certain types of things that managers have to be able to do in game to help their team win. In this series particularly, how much of the series loss do you blame Dave Bell? Like, were there any moments where, like, why is he pinch hitting this guy in this spot, or why are we bringing in this guy? Why are we not walking this guy? Like, how much of the loss do you really put on David Bell's shoulders?
Well, I mean, David Bell didn't hit for 22 innings. So, I mean, that's part of it. But I do feel like he overmanaged a little bit. I mean, Kyle Farmer started 9 games at shortstop, and then in the most important game of the season, in Game 61, the first game of the playoffs, Kyle Farmer starting at short, which was bizarre to me. I'm not anti-Kyle Farmer, but, like, he wasn't even one of the top – like, there were 2 guys that started more games at shortstop than him this season.
Right.
So that seemed bizarre to me, to not have Galvis or Garcia playing short randomly. All of a sudden, Kyle Farmer is. I think it's easy in the playoffs and in important games for people to overmanage, especially inexperienced people. It's like the anti-Dusty Baker disease. Like, Dusty Baker just crawls in a hole and doesn't even know there's a game going on sometimes. But like, we also ran Travis Jankowski for Jesse Winker as a trail runner in a tied extra inning game. And then 2 innings later, Jesse Winker spot came up against a right-handed pitcher. And it sure would have been nice to have your best or second best left-handed batter of the season still hitting,
right,
instead of removing him as a trail runner in an extra inning game. That's really bizarre. That's not one you see very often. And then just like the bullpen thing, I think the bullpen was a struggle all year for David Bell. But Lorenzen, his last 3 appearances were starts. He faces 6 guys in 2 innings of relief, and then they take him out when we have a DH. So there's no, like, why did he come out after getting the first 6 guys out when he was on full rest and had thrown 6 innings in his last start?
Yeah.
And then the very next inning we lose. And maybe Lorenzen would have lost too. Like, there's no way to know what would have happened. But that kind of felt like it was just like, oh, we're in extra innings. You can't let a reliever throw more than 2 innings, like, just because that's what you're supposed to do. When there's no – like, Lorenzen looked really good. And, again, he made his previous 3 appearances were all starts. So he stretched out and can get a lot of guys out. So that was confusing. It just seemed like he was doing some things because he felt like it was a playoff game and he needed to do some things. Like, and I guess that's the biggest thing is that, like, for 22 innings, the Reds did everything different than they did for 60 games, including the start, like Farmer at shortstop, changing pitchers just for the sake of changing pitchers, trying to put on, like, first and third trick running plays for the first time ever. Like, that was the weird stuff to me in the playoffs that you question David Bell a little bit on, I think, is
and that. The big thing for me is, like you just talked about, like, the overmanaging. I kind of felt like throughout the year he never really, like, broke that tendency. Like, he was always that guy the previous year where he wouldn't let starters go past a certain pitch count or a certain amount of innings, and the guys were getting on him a little bit. I felt like he was, a little better with that this year, but still, like, it's almost like he feels like every person on the bench for whatever game they play has to make an appearance at some point. Because I always feel in, like, the 6th, 7th inning stretch around there, like, he's always like, all right, time to pinch hit here, time to pinch this guy, time to get a double switch in. Like, it's like he almost has a checklist where he has to check off, hey, I made a double switch today. Okay, pitch runner was here, pinch hitter was here. This guy pitched today, this amount. Like, it's almost like with his whole analytics side thing, like, he's just trying to work it to his advantage. And it almost, like, takes it away from the Reds, just, like, letting his players play. You know what I mean?
No, I do. I think it's just, like, the way those 2 games were managed were just so different from a lineup perspective from what we did in the game. I mean, for 60 games, I mean, like, the Reds historically relied on the home run. Like, more than any team in the history of baseball, they had the highest percentage of runs ever created by home runs. So then all of a sudden to be people trying to, like, force runs by base running or a safety squeeze. Like, for 60 games, the Reds attempted 0 safety squeezes. And then in game 62, we want Tucker Barnhart to try and safety squeeze a run home. Like, I'm not anti-safety squeeze, but if that's who they want to – like, you can't just completely change who you are in the playoffs. And that's what we saw. Like, that was not the same approach from a team offensive standpoint that they had for the entire season. And
No.
so I think it's a separate argument. Did they have the right approach as a team? But if you have one approach for the entire regular season, you're not going to get good results when you drastically change it all of a sudden in a 3-game playoff series.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Relying on the home run is high risk, high reward. Like, we've seen that. If you don't get hot, then you're not going to score runs. So, but that's kind of the bed they made. So you just kind of have to go with it.
No, and that makes sense completely. Just, trying to change up stuff too late in the season, like, it just didn't make sense to me. The big manager question I will ask, because a lot of people said we shouldn't. In the 13th inning, Freddie Freeman coming up. As a former coach, walked. I knew you were going to say that.
Don't let he's going to win MVP. You can't let the MVP get a walk-off hit with a base open. Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Just put him on.
Yeah, so. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, maybe he thought, like, they didn't have a better shot going down the line 3-4 with the bases loaded. Like, maybe he just wanted to take his chance there. But
I'm not letting Freddie Freeman beat me.
Yeah, I'll agree with that statement 100%. So the last question I got for you, not really pertaining to the series, but just overall as an organization. So Williams came out today and said that he expects to see all coaches back next year. Dave Bell and the management, I'm going to have a talk with everyone just to see where they go for next year. In your eyes, in the off season of what the Reds need to do, what is the priority system? Is number one trying to get Bauer back? Is number one trying to get Cash back? Is number one trying to see where the young guys fit in? Stevenson, Garcia, Hunter Green, Lodolo. What path do the Reds need to take in order to be a playoff team next year and try and make a run again?
Yeah, I mean, most of the key pieces except for Trevor Bauer are still under control, so that's good. I hope Bauer sticks to what he said multiple times in the past and wants a one-year deal, because, I mean, the Reds could give him $30 million for 1 year, and that's fine. Now, he's going to get paid, though. So one of the downsides of a small market team having a pitcher have a career year is that then everyone else wants to pay him. So I don't anticipate him being back. I don't think the Reds are going to give him a long-term deal to match what other teams are going to give him. And so we'll see. But ultimately, I mean, that's kind of how mid-market teams, small market teams have to function. So they're not going to compete with veteran free agent pitching. So they're going to need someone to fill that spot. But I think they have some options in AAA, hopefully. But other than that, pretty much everyone else is back. Tyler Stevenson, I think, will be really a full season of him will be an upgrade behind the plate. Everybody else is back. I think you'll see Garcia most days at short, and Galvis is more of a utility guy. So, and part of it is we got to figure out what is going on with the DH spot next year, which is right. So that's from a position player standpoint. I think that matters too, in what you see. But most of the other pieces are back. The rest of the pitching, other than Bauer's, back. So, I feel good about where they are, and with some young guys. I think the pitching, the young, really good top-end pitching is still probably a year away. I wish they were a little bit closer, but we'll see what happens with Bauer. But if I had to bet today, I wouldn't bet that he's back in a Reds uniform. I hope he is. He's fun to watch. So I hope I'm wrong.
Hey, I hope so too. This is probably maybe the last time I get to wear this nice jersey I bought of him. Yeah. But so actually one of your answers kind of brought me to the next point. So with the universal DH, talking about that, I feel like the Reds have the bats to combat with having universal DH. Like, we can plug players in left and right. Do you see, like, possibly less bats next year, more pitching carried with that, having, like, we have a universal DH. We don't have to hit the batters, or, like, hit the pitchers. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
it could matter. I think a lot of it just depends on the makeup. A lot of it's going to depend on what Castellanos does too, whether he opts out, whether he opts into the second year of his deal. So we'll see where he lands. But I'd like to see him DH some. I know he likes to play outfield, but he's really, really bad at it. But he's a really good hitter. So we'll see. I don't think you'll see them like go sign someone to DH full time, even if that's an option. I think, like you said, they'll just kind of plug and play with Votto with days off, Castellanos maybe some. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think they have the depth to just take guys that are already on the roster and just rotate them through as a DH, which will be good.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey, I'm looking forward to next year. I mean, that's a lot of what Cincinnati Reds fans and Bengals fans always say, hey, looking forward to next year. So, before I let you go, so while we're on the topic of baseball, I'm assuming you've been watching some of the playoff games, getting through. So, as of right now, what would be your World Series prediction and why?
I mean, I think the Dodgers will win. I think they've been the best team. I think they have the best team. So, yeah, I think Dodgers. I'd say Dodgers over Astros.
Really, the Astros?
Yeah, despite Dusty Baker. So I'm not
any big reason for the Astros? You don't think anyone in the AL can take them up? Maybe the Rays or
the Rays could. That'd be fun. But I think the Astros are getting hot at the right time, and another short series coming up where being hot matters. And so we'll see. But it's always a little bit of a crapshoot. But I mean, the Dodgers are the best team. They have been for 3 or 4 years. So eventually, I think if you're the best team for long enough, you're going to win one.
Yeah, the tables are definitely going to turn for you at one point or another. Yeah. So, but all right, everyone, that's going to wrap up the Reds versus the Braves recap here on the Nasty Night Pod. Be on the lookout for later today. I'm going to break down my Bengals and Jaguars preview, and then be on the lookout Sunday night or Monday morning for the Bengals Jaguars recap. Jordan, thank you so much for joining me today. Had a lot of fun. Thank you for taking time out of your day to do this. Hopefully we can get you back on another time as well.
Yeah, love to. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great rest of your weekend.